Hey, so let's talk about the TV show Invincible. It is an Amazon original, and it is based off the comic book of the same name, Invincible. Now, I did not read the comic book. At least I didn't read the whole series. I did read the first issue, found it incredibly boring, and didn't bother to go back and read it. So I didn't read the entire series, but I did watch all 8 episodes of the Amazon series. So it follows, as far as I know, from the people who are watching the series on Amazon. It is following the events of the story, just a condensed version of it. So this review, I guess you could say, is going to be broken up into parts. So I'm going to explain the plot of the show. Then we're going to do into the David Mamet questions. Then I'm going to do some analysis at the end. Um, so I'm not going to go episode by episode. But I will say, let's first talk about how it looks. The animation is actually not bad. It is traditional American superhero animation, so it's very similar to Justice League, Batman. You know, not as fluid as some of the other animation, but the action scenes are really good. They're really well done. So that is really good. If so, let's talk about the plot. What is this thing actually about? I like to say that it's kind of superheroes meets American Pie. In other words, it is like superheroes meets, but it's also a coming of age story. It's a coming of age story for the main character, who is Mark Grayson, the son of a superhero named Omni Man. So Mark finally gets his powers after years and years and years of waiting, and he finally is going to get to become a superhero like his dad. So that's really something that what he wants to happen. Around this time, Omni-Man starts acting weird. He's becoming a little bit more standoffish. He's a lot more, he's a little bit more aggressive. He's a little bit more irritable. And then he decides to, out of nowhere, kill the Guardians of the Globe, a superhero team that is based off the Justice League. We'll talk about that later. He just essentially just murders them, all of them. He just slaughters them all in a bloody massacre at the end of episode 1. The reason he did this, for it's just spoilers, by the way, for people who have not seen it, is that Nolan believes that it's time for the Earth to finally join the Viltrum Empire. That's his idea. That's what he was on Earth for, to bring Earth into the Viltrum Empire. And to do this, some of the superheroes, the people who are protecting humanity, they have to go. And he sees humans as being weak, backward, fragile, and their lives are nothing in comparison to the lives of the Viltrum. And that the human beings will be better off in the Viltrum Empire. So all of this is going on in the mind of Omni-Man. Meanwhile, Mark is teaming up with the the team of Adam, Eve, Duplicate, Robot, and I think it was somebody else. He never really joined the team, but he was affiliated with the team for a little bit. Reasoning being because he was trying to figure out, hey, these are young heroes just like me. And then he finds out that, Adam Eve goes to his school, and she's one of the, he kind of has a crush on her. She kind of has a crush on him, but she was seeing this guy, Rex Explosive, who then cheats on her, and that breaks up the team. Is that because Rex Explosive and Duplicate were having sexual relations? He was having an orgy as she duplicated herself in the shower. So, because the Guardians of the Globe, who were the superhero team of the world, were massacred and killed, there needed to be a new Guardians of the Globe. So Cecil and the Global Defense Force, they bring in Robot to create a new Guardians of the Globe, which ends up being Black Samson, Monster Girl, Rex Explosive, and Duplicate. Also, Adam Eve was picked, but she refused to do it because she didn't want to be on the same team with Duplicate and Rex Explosive anymore. So she decided to go sort of solo and do her own thing. Because the Guardians of the Globe have been massacred, of course, there was an investigation. So Cecil and Cecil being the sort of Nick Fury of this universe, and the Global Defense Force, a super high tech super spy agency. They are investigating what happened to the Guardians of the Globe. Essentially, in the big battle where Omni-Man killed the Guardians of the Globe, he was injured, and he was the sole survivor. There were, I think 7 people in the room. Only one walked away, and there was no signs of anyone else. And so they pretty much came to the conclusion that Omni-Man murdered the Guardians of the Globe. Now, they pretty much came to this understanding pretty early. So the Demon Detective and Cecil and the Global Defense Force, pretty much everybody came to that decision pretty early. Cecil, of course, told the Demon Detective, hey, you need to drop the case. You need to let it go. Demon Detective wouldn't do it. Instead, he went sniffing around Omni-Man's house and sniffing around Omni-Man's family, which, of course, made Omni-Man, understand that he's being investigated. And because of this, Cecil decides to send Demon Detective, who was essentially Hellboy, back to hell where he came from so that he wouldn't get in the way of the ultimate plan. So the reason they can't arrest Omni-Man, besides the fact that he's essentially, all powerful, is the fact that they don't know how to kill Viltrumites. So it was like, hey, we need to just let this guy do whatever it is he's doing, as long as he's not murdering a bunch of other people, until we figure out how to stop a Viltrumite. And that was essentially what, from episode 2 to near the end, what was going on as far as Cecil and the Global Defense Force. They were trying these different ways of finding ways to kill Omni-Man. So essentially what happens in the final episodes is that Mark finds out that Omni-Man killed the Guardians of the Globe. They fight. Omni-Man beats him to a bloody pulp. He spares Mark because he's been on Earth 20 years. And he says even to Mark, hey, I could just have another kid. I'll live forever, essentially. I'll just have, what's another 17 years of me waiting for another Viltrumite kid to be, I could just have another one. But while he's beating Mark to a pulp, he decides, that he really does care about his son. That, the years on Earth have not been a waste. And all the mean things he said about his wife just being a pet and all this type of stuff, it's not 100% true. And so he can't kill Mark for being weak in the way that he wants to. So he lets Mark live, and he flies off into the sun. Well, not into the sun, but flies off into the solar system and disappears. Meanwhile, Mark recuperates and now has to deal with the fact that the man he wanted to be most like is actually a horrible villain who is A-okay with either A, letting human beings die, or B, murdering them, which he murdered quite a few. So that is the overall plot of episodes 1 through 8. Of course, there's going to be some things different. There's some Monster of the Week type of villains in each episode. There's a lot missing. So of all the characters in the show, some of them are pretty well written. And I thoroughly enjoyed some of the characterizations, but there is some things that I noticed that the Guardians of the Globe essentially are the Justice League. You even have a warrior woman who is, I think, or is it War Woman? It's something like that, who is just Wonder Woman. They have a speedster who is essentially the Flash. I think his name, I forget what his name was, Red Rush, I believe it was. So essentially that was, and then Adam Eve's team, or Teen Team, they were essentially the Teen Titans. Because within Teen Titans, you have the relationship between the, Nightwing and Corey Starfire. So it was similar in that effect that you had Adam Eve and Rexplosive. But Rexplosive is actually more like Gambit from the X-Men. He even has the same powers as Gambit, in that he can charge things up, throw them, and they explode. Adam Eve's powers, I'm not exactly sure what superhero her powers are based on, but she's actually a lot more like, this is why I've used American Pie. She's actually kind of like the old popular girl in school that everybody likes, but nobody can really get close to. And in that same vein, Rexplosive is kind of like the stupid jock quarterback. He is the mirrored version of Mark, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Demon Detective, essentially Hellboy. Omni-Man is essentially Superman. Cecil is Nick Fury. Titan, who is, his story was actually very interesting, that he was trying to come from under the thumb of a gangster named Metalhead, who he borrowed money from. And he essentially brings Invincible in to help him overthrow this Metalhead. And in doing so, Titan ends up taking over. So the character is basically a mixture of Colossus and Luke Cage. What Colossus, because Colossus' whole thing is he can cover himself in metal, while Titan can cover himself in, I think it's concrete. And much like Luke Cage, he walks around in a hoodie, like the Netflix version of Luke Cage, who walks around in a hoodie. He got, a daughter, just like Luke Cage does. Robot, who is the leader of the teen team and then ends up being the leader of the New Guardians of the Globe, is essentially Vision. His storyline is actually very interesting too, where he kind of falls in love with Monster Girl, who is the Jekyll and Hyde or the Hulk of the Invincible universe, and he essentially creates a new body for himself in a human body that is based off of Rexplosive for some reason, because Monster Girl kind of likes Rexplosive. So he creates this whole new body. And he even has to let villains out of prison in order to do this. That's what I think made it so interesting is he let these guys out of prison, the Maulers, I think it was, the guys who could create clones of himself. And he, needed that scientific advancement in order to build himself a new body, because this villain knows how to build bodies, create clones. And he wanted to create a clone of himself in order to, get closer to Monster Girl. And so he let this guy out and then tried to arrest him once he helped him. So that was pretty interesting. And he didn't lie about it either. He told the truth after he did it. So that was very interesting. And the Immortal is essentially, I believe, Vandal Savage from the DC universe. Vandal Savage, if I remember correctly, is an Immortal who was around from the dawn of time and is still around today. And the Immortal is essentially that. So that's the breakdown of the characters and the overall plot. I don't want to get into the weeds about individual episodes and how individual episodes played out. But the story is largely about Mark coming to grips with his superpowers, trying to be a superhero, and the old Spider-Man story of trying to date and be a superhero at the same time, and how his girlfriend doesn't understand or him lying to her about who he is and what he does, and then ultimately coming to grips with it and telling her, and then she didn't care anyway. Amber isn't a very well-liked character in the series, and I see why. She's a bit of a hard ass. She's also a bit of she's kind of annoying. She's probably the most annoying character in the series. But let's get into the David Mamet question, and this is the issue, I believe, when it comes to the David Mamet questions, is that this is what makes the story work. Because Kirkman, who wrote the original comic book and I believe is the executive producer of this series, he was able to really drive home and answer the 4 David Mamet questions, but he wasn't just able to do that. He was also able to do it for the villain too. So that gave the story a lot of complexity. So what are the David Mamet questions? The David Mamet questions is based off a screenwriter named David Mamet, who sent out a memo to writers, basically how to create drama and intrigue in stories. And this is, I think, a very good blueprint in which to look at storytelling. So I use it all the time. So people who follow this channel all the time would know it that I do. So the question 1 is, what does your hero want? So essentially, what does Mark Grayson, Invincible, what does he want? Well, you found out in the very first episode, he wants to be a superhero. He wants to be just like his dad. His dad is Omni-Man, the best superhero in the world. Of course, he wants to be like him. So second thing, what is standing in his way? Well, what is standing in his way for a long time was the fact that he didn't have powers. So when we meet Mark, he is unpowered. He's getting bullied. He's getting pushed around. That's typical of superhero stories. And then he gets his powers, but he's still not a superhero, because just having powers doesn't make you a superhero. Mark is inexperienced. He lacks confidence. He buckles under pressure sometimes. Things are very overwhelming for him. The barriers are emotional. Mark is weak. Mark is physically strong. He physically can fight. He's physically tough. But emotionally, he's still taken aback by the blood and the gore, the violence of fighting. These kinds of things they're new to him. So he has to, in every episode, build up a tolerance to the type of violence that is going on. And he's also standing in his own way, because there is a certain level of violence that he's comfortable with. And there is within him a deeper level of violence, but he doesn't really want to bring that out. It really only comes out when he's cornered and he feels like there's no other way to survive this situation. So he is in his own way. A lot of his barriers are emotional. 3, what happens if he doesn't get it? Well, then Mark is a disappointment. He disappoints his dad, who is, of course, the best superhero in the world. So he doesn't want to do that. He also doesn't want to see people get hurt. And oftentimes that is one of the most interesting pieces of the story, is that Mark is helpless in helping other people. Or he is limited, and he sees other people suffer, and he sees other people die, and he doesn't want that. He wants to be able to help. So if he doesn't become a superhero and gain the appropriate experience, he can't be, not just the best superhero in the world like his dad, but he also just can't be helpful. So number 4 is why now? Why is all of this stuff happening now? Well, because Mark's powers are just now kicking in. So because now, Mark has hit puberty, I'm guessing. His powers are now in. Everything works. He's learning how to fly. He's learning how to take damage. He's learning how to, save lives. He's learning how to do these different things. And that is the drama behind the story. As you get the temporal question of why now? Why is the story taking place right now? And it's because everything is centered around Mark finally getting his powers. Omni-Man, everything for Omni-Man starts the moment Mark gets his powers. Omni-Man flips, right? So now we have the same 4 questions for Omni-Man. What does Omni-Man want? Like I said earlier, Omni-Man wants to bring Earth into the Viltrum Empire, and he actually thinks Mark will help him. He purposely waited 17, 20 years or whatever, however it took for Mark to mature, to see if he would gain his powers. Because when he takes over the Earth, he didn't want to have to harm Mark. So it was, okay, Mark can be on my side now. He can help me take over the planet. I can bring him into the Viltrum Empire along with the rest of the Earth. The second question, what is standing in his way? Well, his barriers are also emotional. He's been on Earth for 20 years. He's been married, and despite the fact that he says that this woman is nothing more than a pet to him, people do care about their pets, and they care about their pets a lot. Sometimes they care about their pets too much. And Omni-Man does truly care about his wife, Debbie, and he truly cares about Mark. And that has been, that stands in his way. So the reason why Omni-Man leaves Earth, at least the reason that we're given, is because of Mark and Debbie. He simply cannot, he can kill all of the other humans without a problem, but he cannot kill Mark and Debbie. It's a barrier to him. So that is standing in his way. So, and why now? And of course, like I just said, why now is because Mark's powers just now kicked in. So when you look at one of the psychological things between fathers and sons is that as a father, when you see your son, you see who you used to be. As a son, when you look at your father, you see what you can be. So when you see something like Mark and Omni-Man, and he says, I want to be just like you, Dad. I want to be just like you. And Omni-Man says, you will, but he doesn't know Omni-Man. He doesn't, that's like, a son never truly knows his father. He looks up to him. He sees the potential of what he can be. Oftentimes you'll see sons compare themselves to their dad, and dad seems to be almost unreachable, especially if he's a celebrity like Omni-Man was. Then Mark feels that extra pressure of, I can't just be a good superhero, a decent superhero. I have to be Omni-Man good. That's what everybody's going to compare me to. Of course, they weren't supposed to know that Omni-Man was his dad, but of course, all that stuff unravels as the story goes on. But that's the central crux of the story, is the tyrannical father of Omni-Man and the weak, sort of emotional, but hopeful son in Mark. Mark has this, this positive mental attitude that he can do it despite all the odds. He's going to have to put everything together, and he's going to have to overcome the Viltrumites, who are eventually going to come to Earth and try to take over. He's got to stop his dad, and that's something he's going to have to come to grips with. And that's this, a very good storytelling device. But there's a lot of cliche in this story, and that's really why I give it a 7 out of 10. Despite I think it could have been so much better, but I'm kind of sick and overdone of the evil Superman. You know, the guy comes to Earth to take over the planet using Superman type powers. He can fly, break the sound barrier, he can rip buildings in half. You know, how do we stop this super powered, jack off? It's like, man, I've seen that so much. It's in Jupiter's Circle / Jupiter's Legacy. It's in The Boys. It's in it's in everything, man. It's like, and when we see it again, I'm just kind of like, fuck, how many evil Superman can we possibly have in society? And then I began to ask the question, what is it about our society where we like to see our heroes murdering us and saying things like you're weak and fragile and your lives mean nothing? And saying that in characters that are supposed to be like Superman. And I'm not even a huge Superman fan, but there is something uniquely American about the concept of your heroes turning against you or you turning your heroes into villains. And I remember I said in another thread somewhere right after I saw this, because I knew I was going to end up doing the review, that did the Vikings ever write stories about Thor being evil and murdering a bunch of other Vikings and breaking all of the values that they had spent years impressing upon him? No, I don't think so. like, I don't know if like the ancient Egyptians ever wrote stories about Osiris flipping heel and started doing horrible things to people. It was like you have these heroes because they embody the values of your world or of your society, which essentially for a long time was our world, as people didn't know that much about outside of their own tribe. And you needed heroes and gods who embodied that. And, we had those things, but now we live in a society where there are no heroes, there are no gods. So what we get is often people taking things that already exist, like Spider-Man or Superman or Captain America or whatever, and making them villains into the story to be slaughtered and maimed and ripped apart. And there's something deeply psychologically damaging about that. And that's, to me, is the number one reason I really don't care for this, is because, was it fun to sit and watch it? Like, it was good. I think the action was good. The animation was good. I like the action scenes. I think the story beats, as far as the emotionalism, was fine. But I felt like I've seen it before. I just felt like I've been through this whole, we're just going to take either a fake Avengers or a fake Justice League and rip them to shreds. And that's going to be, that's the crux of our story is, who we thought were the good guys are really the bad guys the whole time. Especially the Superman analog or the Captain America analog is really a villain the entire time. In specific, there's one scene in episode 8 where Omni-Man holds Mark in front of a train. And Mark is flailing his arms. And in flailing his arms, he is destroying the lives. He is murdering hundreds of people. He's not even trying to. But Omni-Man is trying to show him how delicate and fragile and weak humans are. That they can hit us with a train, we'll be fine. And just us trying to survive, us trying to struggle to stay alive, we can kill them. And you see, and this is an incredibly traumatic situation. And I am traumatized as a person who's sitting watching it. And it's like, yeah, you kind of want your villains to, and I felt like this when I was watching Berserk. I don't know if anybody watched Berserk on Netflix, and there was a rape scene in Berserk. And I remember often telling people, especially people who are fans of the series, I would say, why is this rape scene so long? Like, you could have had the exact same message in a much shorter amount of time. And they would say, well, it was meant to turn your stomach, to gross you out, so that you will really want to see Guts kill Griffith. And I would say, I already wanted to see Guts kill Griffith. Before he even raped her, the fact that Griffith betrayed his friends and sold his friends out for power, that was enough, right? Now we have to add that he's going to violently rape this woman. And I'm like, we've reached a level of ugliness that I have no interest in following. And it's not that I knew that there was no more to the Netflix series, so there was no point in even getting too excited about it. But it was just that I just saw a level of ugliness that I was like, it's completely unnecessary for the story. It was gratuitous. And I feel like Invincible is the same way, where you take something that might be traumatic, but you actually traumatize the reader and you traumatize the person who's watching and saying, hey, look at how horrible this is. There was another anime, I think Radu the Healer, where it was a similar thing where, this guy was uh, captured and his healing powers was used by knights and other members in this RPG like world. And he's raped and this kind of stuff. And so he goes and he starts to rape people. And he rapes this princess and he threatens to shove a hot poker inside of her. And people get off on that stuff. I'm just kind of like, this is ugly. Like there are boundaries to this kind of stuff. Gantz was another one. Gantz was so disgusting to me that I stopped watching it. When Gantz was so disgusting to me that I stopped watching it. It gets to that point sometime where it's absolutely gratuitous. And for me, episode 8 was like, all right, I had dealt with, eyeballs popping out of the head and brains being crushed. All right, I don't have a problem with that. But when we have, we're just going to murder a train full of people. And then for Omni-Man to have no consequences whatsoever for it because he's too powerful. Now we're going to Berserk territory where Griffith is so powerful, Guts can't do anything. So sure, he gets to just go and rape this girl right in front of him, knowing that Guts loves her and that she at one point loved Griffith, and he's just going to rape her in front of him. And I just say to myself, like, this is a certain level of blackness that is not necessary in storytelling, as far as I'm concerned. Like, it's okay to get dark, but then that's too dark. That's too far. When you have 3-minute rape scenes, like that's not necessary. When you have, Omni-Man stomping dead human children, you're like, what is going on here? Was that really necessary in order to tell the story that you were telling? You had already showed me that Omni-Man was a violent, murderous guy by the fact that he crushed that pilot's head, the fact that he beat the Guardians of the Globe to death, the fact that he killed all of these members of the Global Defense Force that were trying to stop him. He killed all of them. We saw how violent Omni-Man could be. We saw how dangerous he is. You just stacking more on top of it. And then the hero's impotence and having a complete inability to stop it is not, at some point you have to say no more. And I get it. I truly do get it that you want to have this all-powerful villain. And now the real story is how the hero is going to overcome that all-powerful villain. But at the same time, what if I just don't have any interest in finding out? Because you've done so much and you've grossed me out, there really is no benefit to me. And plus, I didn't see anything within the span of the story that tells me that Mark can stop him. Right? So there was no drama in the final episode where he was actually able to cause Omni-Man any real harm, concern him in any way. And I just didn't see it. And I was just kind of like, makes no sense to me. Now, if you'd have showed me that Mark could hurt Omni-Man, like sure he can land punches, he can throw punches, which is more than he was doing before when they was in their training episodes. He couldn't even touch Omni-Man. But in the final episode, he wasn't able to fight equally with him, but he was able to fight him, and he was tough enough to survive the beating. But we're looking in this situation now where I just don't care. I'm just so disturbed by what I saw and the kind of stuff I'm being asked to take into account. And then this is not even the worst, because I know there is stuff that is really bad in Invincible that has yet to happen yet. So it gets darker. And I'm just saying to myself, like, what happened to the good old days of like a violent monster knocking over buildings, breathing fire, and then the monster has to get destroyed? We have to get these lectures about how terrible we are, about how weak we are, while this super powerful villain destroys our lives, destroys our civilization, and the heroes that we are supposed to put all of our energy in to believe that they're the good guys, they're powerless against him. So it's like I don't see the benefit to that. We could have told the exact same story in a similar way without it being as gross. And I think that once you cross a certain boundary into grossness, it becomes completely uninteresting to me. Now, that doesn't mean that, of course, other people can like it if they want, but I do think that, for me, it went too far. And I think one of the real problems that it bothered me, and I think that the reason it wasn't just the violence of it, so because I'm not one of those people that's grossed out about excessive violence or excessive sex. But I think that when you have an incredibly impotent hero, that there is absolutely nothing that you can see that they can do to stop it. You just kind of feel like, what kind of hero is this? Like, it just doesn't seem to make sense. And when I look at and I talk about all these different issues, all of these things are about, like Rita the Healer, you're supposed to identify with the rapist, the guy who's raping people. We're supposed to feel bad for him because he was raped and abused and all that kind of stuff. So we're supposed to be like, I guess, cheering the fact that he's raping other people. No, I'm not going to do that. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's degenerate. When I'm watching Berserk, I'm supposed to feel bad for Guts, and I do feel bad for Guts. But then I also know that Griffith is all powerful God now. There's nothing you can do. And then also when I know that that, especially knowing Berserk, I don't think it's still not over yet. So there's still no climax to this story. What is, I don't get it. Like, and that's really, I have a big problem with impotent heroes. I have a huge problem with that. It is one thing for your hero to not have figured it out yet. To, what do I do? How do I figure it out? It's another thing when your heroes are being tortured. And Mark was being tortured. Guts was being tortured. When you are being held by your head to murder a bunch of people, and then there's nothing you can do about it, that's not heroic. Nobody wants to watch Spider-Man get his fingernails pulled off, or have his teeth yanked out of his head, or something like that. And it's kind of like, sure, could that be an interesting story? I guess. But who really wants to see Spider-Man tortured in that way? I don't get value out of watching my heroes get tortured, or the guy who's supposed to be the hero of the story get tortured. I don't get any value out of that. So for me, the hero should always be, the villain should be just out of the hero's grasp. Like, I'm doing my best, but I just can't. It's just short. And maybe in a different time, maybe with a little bit more experience, I could do it. But in these situations where the hero is completely outclassed to the point where they're a plaything of the villain, now we're getting to the point where, okay, it's going to be some kind of Deus Ex Machina bullshit in order to stop this. Now I know that probably Invincible, the story is probably going to be that Mark ages, he gets better, he learns a deeper meaning to his powers. Maybe the GDF help him come up with some type of technology in order to help him fight off the Viltrumites. I'm sure that's what it's going to be. But I just don't see any interest in it. Now, when I was talking about, oh yeah, just another evil Superman, I had not watched Invincible yet. People were telling me like, no, it's actually more like American Dragon Ball. And that, Omni-Man is like Goku if he, didn't have the head injury. And Mark is Gohan. And that is what made me watch it, because as much as I love Dragon Ball. And I see the parallels that people are talking about. I see that, Mark is very Gohan. Gohan is very weak. He grew up human. Doesn't really want to fight. He wants to be a hero, but he doesn't really want to fight. He's a bit of a goof. And Mark is all of that too. But Omni-Man is a lot more like, it's, oh, hey, that's what Kakarot would be if he, hadn't hit his head and become a hero. He would be this bloodthirsty villain who would take over the world. And I say, okay, cool, but I don't want to see Goku like that. I don't want to even think about Goku being a guy who murders a bunch of people. So when I was thinking about Omni-Man, I looked at him more like Vegeta, right? because that was Vegeta's angle. Is that Vegeta had this family now, and he wanted to be the Dark Prince of all Saiyans once again, even murdering innocent people in at the Majin Buu arc of Dragon Ball Z, and he was murdering all those people, and he was talking about how weak people are and how terrible people are, and he wanted that darkness to return to his heart because he wanted the power. That was, that showed me that. But we had also we also gets that bit of a, is Vegeta completely ensorcelled or is he making bad decisions? Like, which one is it? And of course, we get that Vegeta is just making bad decisions. He's just so obsessed with strength and power that he is going to, abuse Trunks and abuse Bulma, and not physically abuse them, but abuse them in saying that they don't mean anything to him. That and so when Omni Man was like, "Oh, she's just like a pet to me," I was like, "Okay." Kirkman watched Dragon Ball, got to the Majin Buu arc, and decided, "Oh, that's my new hero. That's my villain. Is I'm going to create Majin Vegeta in the verge of Omni Man." And Omni Man essentially is Vegeta from Dragon Ball. We say that he's a Superman analog because the Dragon Ball characters are Superman analogs. Goku's story is almost completely Superman. So Omni Man is essentially Vegeta from Dragon Ball, when Vegeta was, if Vegeta had pretended to be human and stayed on Earth, raised a family, and then said, okay, now we can take over the planet. That's pretty much what Invincible is. And it lacks the charm of Dragon Ball. Because what makes Dragon Ball work is Goku, right? Goku being a guy who is, even if he's completely outclassed, he never gives up. He does not surrender. Even the one time where he decided, well, I can't beat Cell, he was able to step aside because he knew Gohan could do it. That was the only time he kind of backed down from a fight. But Goku was a moral constant in the Dragon Ball universe, to the point where, sure, Vegeta could be a complete and total dick. He's not the moral compass of the Dragon Ball universe. Goku is. In this story, we're being told that the moral compass of the planet, there isn't one, because the Guardians of the Globe have been completely murdered. And everybody that we now are replacing them, we know that they're extremely flawed people. For instance, we didn't get to learn that much about the Guardians of the Globe before they got killed. They were completely mostly undeveloped characters. But then when we get the new Guardians of the Globe, we find out that, Rexplosive cheated on his girlfriend with his teammate, who, was also the teammate of his girlfriend. So we kind of we've already put black spots all over them. We can't look at them as being the moral compass of the story anymore. Cecil is double-crossed somebody that he brought in to help him. He's not the moral compass anymore. Debbie is a good moral compass for the show, but she's not a fighting superhero character. That she's not going to stop Omni-Man. Mark can't stop Omni-Man. We've just already established that he's completely impotent in comparison to Omni-Man. We don't have anybody that is the moral compass of the Invincible universe that can say to Omni-Man, you're wrong. I'm going to prove that you're wrong. And if your mentality is might makes right, you're not the strongest. I am. That was Vegeta's problem with Goku. Is that Vegeta can be this horrible, complex character because Goku is a constant. Goku is always going to be the guiding light that's going to correct Vegeta's mistakes. You're fucking up, Vegeta. I'm going to have to kick your ass. Stop doing it. All in all, hey, they may be playing for 1 minute. If Vegeta start crossing the line, Goku's like, nope, you're wrong. Get back. Same thing with Piccolo. Goku was able to be the moral constant so that we get to look at the complexities of Vegeta and say, damn, I hate that my man's fell into this. But we know that Goku can stop him. Goku is not impotent. At no point ever in the story is Goku completely and totally impotent and incapable of going forward. Even when he's completely outclassed. in terms of like in the Frieza saga where he couldn't defeat Frieza in at any point, there kept being those huge comebacks that Goku would have. Like when he fired that huge Kamehameha from under the water as Frieza was drowning him. They wrote the story that Goku never gave up. Goku was never in, even when he was in a position of being beaten. And we keep being told there's nothing you can do. Goku never gave up. He kept coming. He kept taking the abuse. He kept coming, and eventually he overcame. He became a Super Saiyan. And then we see him like, okay, Frieza's fucked, right? He was never really completely impotent, you know? Frieza pushed him and pushed him and pushed him and pushed him and pushed him, and he finally was like, fuck this, snapped, and now Frieza's in trouble. That's how you do this story. What Berserk does and what Invincible does is completely cut the penis off the hero. And now it says, well, he'll get a new penis later, or he'll grow another one. It's like, well, no, you know, I don't buy that. You know, I have no interest in sitting back and waiting for it. You know, if Goku would have been beaten to paste and the only reason he survived is due to the graciousness of Frieza, Dragon Ball would not be what it is today. You know, so you can take elements of Superman and Dragon Ball and Justice League and Hellboy and Marvel Comics and, you know, the Hulk and all that type of stuff and throw it into your universe and mix it all up and create something decent. That's what Kirkman did. But ultimately, there's a lot of ugliness and a lot of stuff in it I didn't like. Now, would I continue to watch it? Because season 2 and season 3 have already been announced. So I give it a 7 out of 10. But will I continue to watch it? I don't think it's horrible. But I do think it's gross. And you know, gross is bad in its own way. Like I wasn't sickened by Invincible until episode 8. And there was some stuff in the story that was meant to shock and awe. You know, like William's boyfriend being turned into a mechanical cyborg monster. You know, there was some things that was meant to turn you off. But, you know, you have to understand that, sure, those things are bad, but, you know, and those things are a little off kilter, but they're basic story arcs. I mean, it makes perfect sense for you to do that. But there are things in the story that are absolutely gross, you know, and I just, so I give it a C, a 7 out of 10. As far as storytelling is concerned, I do think that there's enough goodness there to warrant continuing watching it, because some of the characters are really likable. Mark is likable. That's very important that you do like Mark. He is not, you know, despite the fact that he's a completely inexperienced hero. He had only been a hero for less than a year at this point. So he's completely inexperienced, but he's a likable enough character. And some of the other characters are likable enough. And then there are some of the villains that are very interesting, and you want to see Mark take them on, like Titan. Like, that's really what my interest is. I really want to see Mark fight Titan again. I want to see Mark take on the gigantic lion head thing. I want to see him fight that guy again. You know, so there's enough of stuff like that in the story to warrant continuing to watch it. That's why I give it a 7 out of 10, not a 6 out of 10. Because if there had not been some good B and C stories to it, then I probably wouldn't want to watch Invincible again. But because of the stories like the Titan story, the Mauler story, the robot angle, you know, Immortal, what's going on with him, there's enough questions that I want answers to in the series to warrant continuing to watch the series. So they did a good job, because normally if the A story is this gross, I probably would have been done with it, like I was with Berserk, because there was nothing else in Berserk that I really cared about, you know. But there's enough stuff in here that I actually do care about. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel. Tell me what you think in the comment section below. Send cash via the Cash App or via Subscribestar if you want to subscribe to the channel that way. Thank you guys for this 40 some odd minute ramble, and I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.